Hello and welcome back to the Franchise Growth Pod. My name is Belle and I am back today with Jennifer Brannon. Jen, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me, Belle.
Welcome back to the pod. We're so excited. Jen has been a busy bee lately, so it is so fun. Honestly, even just to get to chat one-on-one with you is going to be so fun. And we are kicking off this episode of the podcast with a fun little icebreaker question. Are you ready, Jen?
I am. I'm a little scared, but hit
Okay.
me.
Okay. So Jen is our VP of Ops and is such an incredible resource for so much value. We're going to get into. We're going to talk today about when to hire a full-time field coach into your brand. Jen's going to have so much, amazing things to share. But she is also a bit of a handyman when it comes to DIY and projects. And I only found this out. Well, I think actually I found out when you initially joined the team years ago because we had like a little chat and we were talking about fun facts and you did mention it then, but we've never really talked about like your favorite project or your favorite build, your favorite like creative thing you've done in the building DIY part of your life. So I'm curious, is there anything that stands out, like any project or specific building thing that really stands out as like your favorite thing you've done?
Well, I have a lake house, cottage in Canada, we call it, and a tree fell on our outhouse.
Oh,
And so I attempted, I'm not going to claim that I did a good job or that I finished the project, but I attempted to rebuild the outhouse. And I'm very handy and I can build some things. It was just a lot more hours than I was willing to dedicate. So I got it half done and then abandoned the project and have never gone back to it. So it's kind of sitting in the forest near my lake house, waiting for me to come back to it, which I will at some point.
okay. So just to be clear, Jen, you're saying your favorite building project you've ever done is halfway finishing a broken out house. That's
It's true. It's true because I really need it.
gotcha.
Um, and it was a very big endeavor for me to tackle it.
That's
So
huge.
it's
No, it's a really big project. Well, that's really neat. And I guess we've also learned something else about you, which is you have a beautiful lake house slash cottage. If anyone has heard Jordan on the podcast, he endlessly bugs Jen about her cottage life, but I think it's amazing. I think it's so fun. And you like work out of the cottage sometimes too. You're just like living your
Mhm.
best cottage life every summer.
I am.
Well, that's an awesome answer. Thank you so much. And we are going to actually just dive right into the questions around hiring a full-time field coach because so this is something we get questions about mostly from brands who are they're not brand new. This is mostly a question we get when brands can kind of hit like 10, 15 units, maybe a little bit lower, but people have systems set up. They have some form of support sometimes, and they're really starting to wonder as far as hiring an actual coach. So someone who's going to be working with the franchisees one-on-one, or even maybe in a group situation, but working directly with them. And like that's their full-time role is supporting. So sometimes it's partly operational support. So things like ops manuals and resources and templates and all of that. But a lot of the times it's also that coaching role, right? So it's the business coaching sessions that help them achieve their goals. And a lot of brands do come to us going, is there a perfect time? Like, have I gone past that perfect time? Are there things I should be looking for? So I'm curious, like, is there a perfect time to hire a field coach, or are there just things to be looking out for?
That is a quite a loaded question because there's not one perfect scenario. It's very dependent a lot on what else is going on in the franchise system, who's there, how hands-on, whether it's the franchisor or other team members are on that. But if you are really looking to go out and hire somebody new to coach, you want to be, I mean, the franchisees need coaching right from day one. So somebody's got to be coaching them and starting that right from when they launch and doing the regular coaching and coaching meaning, helping them with that strategic growth, not just operational support. So
Yeah.
somebody's got to be doing that. But as far as going out and hiring someone, we always say ideally it's one coach to 15, 20, 25 franchisees, very dependent on the brand, on the concept. And that's really taking into consideration that you are really running an effective coaching program, because there are going to be brands out there that say, oh, well, we only have one coach for 50 franchisees. And there's no way that one coach is really doing, in my opinion, my humble opinion, is really doing a real effective way of strategic growth coaching those franchisees. So I like to see a franchisor really thinking about hiring someone as they're gearing up to 10 units,
Mhm.
knowing that they've got others in the pipeline. So maybe they've got some realistic goals of, I'm going to add another 5 franchisees in the next 4 or 5 months, or something like that. So that 15 mark is on the horizon. That's kind of what I would recommend.
Well, first of all, I just want to clarify, if anyone is new to listening, Jen's opinion is not that humble. Jen has so much expertise in this area. You have been a franchisee, you have helped coach franchisees from a home office team, so been that coach position, and now build out frameworks and coaching programs and hire and train coaches as like your specialty. So just to clarify, Jen's thoughts on this are something we should be listening close to. So Jen, what I'm hearing is a couple things. So the 10 to 15 mark is, I think, a really helpful thing for some people to be thinking of. But I'm also hearing, so there's no perfect time. So it's not like, oh, I've hit 10 franchisees, I have to hire someone with it. Like, that's not exactly what we're looking at here. It's not like one thing happens and it's like, you have to have a full-time salaried person in place. That's not exactly the situation. It's a lot more thinking about your concept, which you mentioned a couple times, but also something I heard was the program. So not the focus so much on just bringing on someone to be full-time and doing coaching, but also really considering what your program looks like, what your current coaching or support looks like as well. So, and then kind of keeping in mind that 10 to 15, between 10 and 20 kind of ish is a good number to kind of have in your head as you're thinking about that as well. I have a couple follow-up questions on that. One of them is is it too early to be coaching? We do, and you kind of addressed this already, but I think with some franchisors, especially around that 10, 15, 20 units, are starting to come to us asking about, it's like, well, we have certain forms of support, like maybe they have like, templates and resources like a library, right, which is awesome, and maybe they have people, like a hotline type situation where they can reach out. All of those are kind of more that operational or reactive support. But when it comes to like, actually, as you said, like strategy and like growth coaching a franchisee to succeed their own goals, help their business grow and all those things, and you're kind of saying there's never too early a time to start on that. Like ideally, we would kind of start working on some strategy and coaching right off the bat. And but then also, we don't always need to hire someone full time. So is that where a franchisor could step in and do that, or maybe someone on their team? Like, what have you kind of seen people do instead of bringing on someone full time when they only have maybe 2 franchisees, that helps them get to that 10, 15 where hiring someone full time makes sense? Like, what does that in between sometimes look like?
Yeah, definitely. We see it all the time, is somebody from the home office
Mhm.
will act as the coach.
Yeah,
And quite often you're wearing a lot of hats. It's just the
yeah,
reality of it, whether it's the franchisor or they've got a couple of team members, but somebody's got to be focused on being the acting like the coach to the franchisees, and with that plan of action at, okay, so, and then at whatever the number is, when we get to 8, when we get to 10, now we're going to hire somebody, because that person is not, even at 8, 10, 12, even at 15, there are, as you're developing a franchise system, there are so many things that need developing as far as franchisee support goes, that person that you're hiring is not necessarily just doing one-on-one coaching with
yeah.
the franchisees. There's all kinds of other creation of systems and processes in the resource library that you talked about, and that kind of thing. And the other thing I do want to say, your question about, is it too early to do strategic growth coaching? And really, early coaching is, of course, there's going to be operational, coaching
Yeah.
and helping people learn what they need to do to be successful from an operation standpoint. But it's never too early to have goals and to be working toward those goals. Maybe the first goal is even having them break even, or getting a certain number of customers. And really early on, part of strategic growth coaching, in regardless of when you're doing it, is about how to help your franchisee get to those goals. So it's not just about, training them on, okay, this is how you make this sandwich, for instance, but more about your goal is to get 25 customers through the door. What are all of those action steps that you need to do to make that happen? And then the coach is acting almost like an accountability buddy with that franchisee, of keeping tabs on them, how's it going, talking through issues, helping them overcome obstacles so that they can be achieving those goals. And so you are doing a variety of, or a combo of, the operational support as well as that proactive growth coaching.
Yeah, I think that's super, super important, and good to clarify the difference of hiring a full-time role. And as you said, that full-time role can kind of tackle a lot of things within the franchisee support space, which every brand needs at 8, 10, 12 units, which is awesome. And so it doesn't even necessarily mean all of their hours are like one-on-one time with franchisees. But I think it is good to clarify the difference of like when you're starting to notice that initial type of coaching is starting to maybe transition, and the person who was doing that from the home office team is starting to reach capacity, or start maybe franchisees aren't getting the type of support they were before. But I also think, and someone brought this up on LinkedIn or something, but I saw someone say like, well, if you have really, really strong training, coaching for your first few franchisees seems a little silly, because you're spending so much time training, so much time talking to them, because they're, but I'm like, that is coaching, like that ongoing staying connected to your franchisee, especially those first like 5, as a either a franchisor yourself or someone on your operations team, or whatever that looks like for you. I think that part is actually so, I would say, even more important to have that kind of one-on-one. And as you said, goals can look really different at that stage when you're just getting started, maybe you don't have a full framework built out yet, but that's going to help build the validators that are going to get you your next 10, 20, right? And so I think that, yeah, to say like you just train them and you're like, hey, now go for it, and I'm going to go work on getting some more franchisees, like that's not actually building the brand that's going to scale and grow sustainably and ethically forward. And so, yeah, I think that it's never too early to coach. It just, you don't necessarily need to hire that full-time person right away. But you do have to have someone doing that task. I think that's a really, really key point. And it can look a little different as you grow and develop. And then that other point you made about when you have that field coach come in the full-time role, it won't necessarily mean that every single spare minute of their time is spent coaching franchisees. And actually, they're going to help you build out a lot of that framework, franchisee support, resources, templates, all those other things. I'm curious, what else, when you're kind of hiring that, and we do have a whole episode, by the way, if you're listening, I think we actually have more than one episode, but I'll link a couple in the show notes just about hiring specifically. And so like DNA of a coach, what you're looking for, how to hire. We have some other episodes planned for that in the next few months, which is awesome. But when it comes to hiring that full-time role and like what else they're going to be working on, what else would that look like? Like besides that one-on-one time coaching franchisees, which is I think what people always think of is like, I need someone full-time to do that. What else is that role typically doing when you're kind of early, when you're hiring for the first time, that first full-time person? What else is on their list?
Well, it's typically around franchisee support.
Okay.
So, in order to support our franchisees, it's not just about the coaching or the operational coaching / training, whatever it might be. It's everything else. So, creation of the resource library, making sure that you have templates for your franchisees to utilize, regardless of, it could be job descriptions and job postings for staff and training. It could be things around social media. It could be, potentially even social media posts and graphics and things like that. A lot of SOPs, so standard operating procedures around how to do things that maybe are beyond what typically goes in training. Like the how to make the sandwich. We're not talking about this from a different perspective, it might be around potentially hiring people, managing people, leadership, things like that as well. So there's a lot in that library, for instance, creating opportunities for collaboration for your franchisees. So doing something like that, roundtables, creating little committees to bring people together to work on elements. My brand, we had a recruitment committee because we needed a large number of tutors. So that can be done, even only with 5, 6, 7 franchisees. Franchisees love to come together, and we want those people to be they're our early adopters, and they're our voice with when they do validation and that kind of stuff. So we want to bring them into the fold and make sure they feel supported and that kind of thing. So there's lots of other things that a coach could be working on, for sure.
Yeah, I think that's good for people to hear too, because I have heard even a few people mention like, oh, we thought about hiring someone, but we didn't think we had enough franchisees for them to work like face to face with them as like a full-time role. And I think it's really important to keep in mind, like with any role, no roles like full-time job is just to be on Zoom or be out in the field every single moment of every day. There's obviously going to be a lot of those other tasks that are on their radar until again you build out that the franchisee list, roster, whatever, I don't know what you call it in field coach terms.
Yeah, they may also have start playing a large part in training as well. In the early stage, eventually your trainer is going to be separate from your coaches, for sure. But in the early days, you could have your coach being the initial trainer of your new franchisees as well, for sure.
I think that's really, really interesting and totally makes sense, honestly, when you think about hiring any role when you're kind of starting out like that as a more emerging or growing brand. Everyone kind of helps with everything, and knowing that role doesn't need to be fully on that one task in order for it to make sense is, I think, really, really important to hear. I have a last question about this. And this is just mostly in regards to some of the fractional field coaching work that AC does. I'm just curious, and you've helped build out a lot of these programs. And so I wanted to hear just directly from you the options for if someone is wanting to get some, especially a framework in place or a program in place, or getting their franchisees excited about coaching, but they're not quite at the point where they can bring on a full-time role. So whether that's because they're kind of a little bit smaller, or whether that's just because they need to restructure some leadership team a little bit. But if a leadership is feeling exhausted with, supporting franchisees more proactively, and they're looking for an option beyond or besides a full-time hiring, a full-time role, what options have we created? And specifically, you created a lot of these programs that give them that fractional option. So bringing someone in and kind of helping them build the framework, and then when they're ready, getting support in that hiring process.
Yeah, I did come up with this idea for this reason, because we were seeing more and more people that were on that cusp, and we're just, I just am not ready. And sometimes it's like, I don't have the budget also to hire somebody full time. And especially hiring, to me, and well, to all of us at ACA, the field coach is one of the most important roles in the whole entire system. This is not a junior position. The field coaches are the ones that are helping. A good field coach that has been trained properly and effectively on strategic growth coaching are the ones that are driving the growth with the franchisees.
Yeah.
So you want to sorry, so back to what we were saying about the fractional. So knowing that I'm not in a position to look for that person, I don't even know how to find that person. This is why we offer this service, where one of our advisors will come into your system and be your fractional field coach. And often I've had people say, well, how could they, don't know my business, how could they do that? And what happens is people fall into that old trap of thinking that coaching is solely operational. And, a good franchise system, or a more an effective franchise system, separates out the operational support of how to make the sandwich. And I know I use this silly example, but how to make the sandwich and how we're going to get that support, whether it's a ticketing system or for the operational things, the franchisor or somebody at home office team is still going to deal with that, because I'm not going to come in and teach how to make the sandwich. I don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
Or whatever the service might be. But what I do know how to do, and everyone on our team knows how to do, is do strategic growth coaching to help these franchisees move forward in their business, make sure that they're doing those elements that they need to do to drive growth. And so we come in, we learn about your system. We have to understand what the concept is. We have to see what elements you have in place, as far as tools and resources and training and onboarding and all of that kind of thing. We've got to understand your franchisees. We've got to look at, if you have KPIs that you utilize and that kind of thing. And then what we do is we will do one-on-one coaching with the franchisees. But what we can also do is, if you're someone that like, I don't know what I don't know as a franchisor, I need some guidance, we can also do coaching with you as the franchisor and help you build out the framework. Sometimes we'll create some things, some templates and things like that you can utilize, a scorecard or, things like that, marketing plan, whatever it might look like. But we can certainly guide you and your team so that you can build yourself a really solid franchise support system while having coaching being done with your franchisees. And then the icing on the cake is, after a bunch of months, when you're ready, we can actually help you recruit and hire and then properly train your field coach, so that person then comes and takes over once we've gone through that process, and we back away and you are all set with a solid field coach, with a developing infrastructure for your franchisee support program, and you're way ahead of the game than you were prior. And it's really as simple as that.
That's amazing. Yeah. And Jen mentioned it earlier, but we did create this because it was something we were seeing a lot of, in terms of, we have a lot of education and trainings and stuff on coaching in general. And we had done a lot of like framework building and kind of optimizing field coaches. And then we were starting to really notice, like, some people actually are not quite at that point where they have that hired role all put in place yet. And some people aren't even quite ready to take that step, but they still really wanted that framework. And honestly, that franchisee buy-in to growth and coaching and becoming better business owners and skill development and all these things, they wanted to bring that into their system. And this is a really awesome option. So yeah, definitely do connect with us at angelacote.com if you have any questions about fractional field coaching or field coach frameworks, one-on-one coaching for the executive level, to put that in place as well. So we have a couple options for how to do that. So definitely do get in touch there. Jen, this has been an awesome conversation. So much value. I think this is clarifying a lot of things for any brand who's kind of at that key point of trying to decide, are we at a point where this makes sense, or does it make sense to do maybe a different direction, and then eventually at a different time bring someone on. So I think this is going to provide a lot of clarity for brands listening. So thank you so much. Is there anything else you want to share before we finish up?
No, I don't think so. I don't think I have any last minute
Thoughts?
thoughts, other than really, I just want to say two things. One, don't fall into the trap of only giving operational support to your franchisees, because that isn't enough. It really isn't. And then the second point that now I'm losing is, start it early. The worst and the hardest thing I've seen franchisors do, or one of the things, is where they've not done any coaching and they're at 30, 40, 50 units, and realize now my franchisees are unhappy because they haven't received the support they need. And now I want to get some good growth coaching going, but now the franchisees are resistant and feeling, a little mad that they're not getting what they need. And it's harder at that point to then really bring in with the legacy franchisees, if you will, bring in the coaching. It certainly can be done. It's just a little bit bigger of a challenge. So if you start it right at the beginning, so that your franchisees get used to it, then they know this is just part of the program, because you should never be hearing from your franchisees, I don't need any coaching. Everybody needs coaching. Oprah gets coaching. Michael Jordan got coaching, right? Everybody needs coaching as long as it's done in partnership with the franchisees that's based on their goals and you're partnering with them to help them achieve those goals.
Amazing. What an awesome way to finish out. Thank you so much, Jen. This was so fun. And we'll have to have you back on the pod very soon. And everyone who's listening, thank you so much. And everyone, go be awesome.